In this episode of Everyday Movie Recap, we will discuss the movie Leaving the World Behind. A hacker destroys their devices as they are on vacation in a beautiful rental home, and two strangers show up. What do you think the two strangers want from them? Let's find out, shall we? A woman named Amanda Sanford decides to go on vacation without informing her husband, Clay Sanford. Amanda told Clay that she had rented a lovely house near the beach. Although Clay doesn't seem to comprehend why she's rushing, nonetheless, he supports the decision she made. When Rose Sanford's brother, Archie Sanford, questioned his sister if she had farted, his dad advised him to just let her go. The family arrived at the home, which boasts incredibly exquisite amenities, including a pool. The children were thrilled to enter the house so they could enjoy the pool. Clay noticed a number of alcoholic beverages in the cabinet, and Amanda informed him that the alcohol was not for them. Seeing their children having fun in the pool filled the two with joy. After that, Amanda told Clay she was heading into town to pick up some groceries. Amanda went shopping for food. After that, she noticed a man named Danny purchasing a large quantity of goods and water bottles. When she returns, she tells Clay to get ready to go to the beach. After that, the family makes their way to the beach, where they are having fun sunbathing. They hurriedly ran away as they noticed a ship approaching them. As soon as the Sanford family arrives back at the house, Amanda notices a deer, and Clay informs her that it is a sign of good fortune, as described in Mesoamerican mythology. The family continues to enjoy their trip despite what transpired earlier. A knock on the door later that evening interrupts their games. George Scott, the man introducing himself as the home's owner, along with his daughter Ruth Scott. George apologizes for showing up unannounced, but he have no other option due to the unavailability of the phone service. George informs them that there was a blackout in the city, and as a result, they made the decision to return to this place because that is where he felt the most comfortable. Clay decides to let them stay, despite Amanda's disapproval. Amanda claims she felt uneasy with the situation and disliked the thought of staying with the stranger. Then, George informed her that he would reimburse her for half of what she had already paid. Amanda had no choice but to let them stay in the basement. Ruth tells George that they must get them out of the house, but George reminds her that Sanford must think that everything is fine and that they cannot accomplish that by frightening them. Ruth questions her about whether everything would be alright and whether his client ever had any mention of anything. In response, George states that they shouldn't discuss this until they have all the information they need. Returning to Amanda, she doesn't feel at ease, particularly with Ruth, whom she dislikes. During the time that they were asleep, the television unexpectedly started working, and it displayed news of a cyber attack that had occurred across the entire nation. However, the Sanford and Scott families were unaware of this information. Rose wakes up her mother the following morning and informs her that she is unable to watch her favorite show, Friends, on TV since everything is not working and there is no internet. Her mother just told her to wait in the living room, but she keeps asking her to fix the TV. Rose saw two notifications on her phone, one about the blackout and the other about the hackers being the cause of the power outage. However, the alert disappeared before she could even show it to Clay. Amanda begins to lose her mind over the whole thing. At that point, she turns to face Clay and asks him why he didn't look bothered by everything she had said. In an attempt to soothe her, Clay simply informs her that he will be heading to the store to pick up some newspapers and find someone who knows the situation, assuring her that he's going to take care of them. As Rose glances out the window, she spots George's car. She tells her mother that it's very expensive. Amanda informed her that they arrived yesterday night due to an issue and that the owner of the car is also the one who owns the house. Rose grabbed her father and begged him to fix the TV, but he informed her there was nothing he could do. Rose saw an entire flock of deer encircling them as she was relaxing by the pool. Meanwhile, Ruth woke up and asked if she could get some coffee. Amanda then told her about the news she saw at her notification bar. Amanda advised her not to share anything with her children so as to prevent them from worrying about anything. Ruth responded to her by saying, "I don't think this is nothing." When Ruth inquired about her work, she replied that it had to do with advertising. She also stated that Clay works as a professor. George learned about the notifications, and following that, he went over the Love You bug virus. According to him, it was an internet computer virus that first appeared in 2000. The email subject line read, "I love you." By clicking on it, you might send the attachment by email to every person you know. The destruction of businesses resulted in the loss of billions of dollars. Two teens from the Philippines were involved. He continued by telling them that it might be as harmless as that. Ruth then confided in George that she was concerned about her mother's flight. George made an effort to calm her down. Sadly, the radio is still not working. Despite Clay's attempt to see if it would work, George, on the other hand, made a house visit to his neighbor. Following that, George allowed himself to enter the house and inquired as to whether or not there was anyone else present. Rose and Archie inspect the entire area, including the forest. George, in the meantime, grabs a satellite phone, trying to check if it's going to work, and starts looking around. After loading everything into the car, he went to investigate the back of the house. Clay met a woman, but he couldn't understand her language. Following that, he left the woman. Clay was filled with a deep sense of guilt for abandoning the woman. After that, he saw something in the sky, and he drove the car as quickly as he could. George was terrified when he discovered a plane crash and a lot of dead victims. George was able to escape the coming airplane that crashed at his exact spot by running as fast as he could. He was able to survive the plane crash. Rose noticed a number of birds soaring in the skies while she and her brother inspected the forest. In an effort to keep Ruth from becoming anxious, George returned home and hid all he had seen. He told Amanda that the satellite phone he attempted to use did not function properly. He explained to her that satellite phones are designed to always have a signal, and the only reason for them not to work is if the satellites are knocked out of commission. George believes that the satellites may have encountered a problem because they linked to computers down below. He then told her about the plane crash, mentioning that he thinks that what's going on is not something small like the two teenagers in the Philippines did, and he strongly believes that this is something big. Suddenly, the lights went out, and Amanda became anxious. All of them heard a buzzing sound, but they were unable to determine its source. Attempting to get away from the sound, Amanda ran into the forest while everyone else covered their ears. When the noises eventually subsided, she saw her children in the woods. Amanda, who is becoming agitated over everything, recommends getting supplies. She and George discuss something that ended up with her telling George that she didn't trust him. Ruth questioned her about the reasons why it was so difficult for her to trust them, and after that, Ruth left the room. Amanda then told George that he saw a man yesterday in the parking garage of the store hoarding supplies and water bottles. She believes that the man is aware of what will occur. George told her that it was Danny, George's contractor, a self-proclaimed survivalist. While they were talking, Clay arrived, and they hugged each other. Clay told his wife what had transpired during his journey, and Clay gave George a piece of paper. After reading the paper, Archie read it and said that it meant death to America, and so the family made the decision to move out. They ignored George's attempts to stop them from leaving. As they were traveling, they noticed several cars blocking their path. Amanda noticed that the car was completely new and checked the cars. Amanda instructed Clay to get into the vehicle since the car was approaching as a self-driving car. With a desperation to get away from the car that was going to crash, Amanda sprinted towards their car. The family returned to the house. Every one of them becomes anxious and begins to formulate a strategy in an effort to save their lives. Rose felt a great deal of frustration because she was unable to finish watching her favorite show. Meanwhile, Archie relieves himself by looking at the picture on his phone of Ruth. While filling the tub in the bathroom, Clay is conversing with Ruth. He brushed off her question about whether he had a passionate session with one of his students. Speaking with George, Amanda expresses her regret for what she said to him and his daughter. George then talked about the reasons he went back to his house. He then tells her about his friends unexpectedly contacting him to transfer money. His most powerful friend joked with him before saying that he has an annual meeting with the rest of the evil cabal that runs the world. During the call, he asks his powerful friend if he wants to have a drink, but at that moment, he informs him that he is leaving. He joked, "Oh yeah? Are you with your evil cabal this weekend? I thought solely of the winter solstice." Even though he usually laughs at terrible jokes, however, his friend did not laugh. Although it appears as though he is sorry for him, his friend advises him to take care of himself. Amanda then questioned if his friend was involved in their current situation. He then tells her that no one is in control, but those like his friend, who gets a heads up, have access to the correct information. After that, Rose goes to her brother's room and tells him that the show Friends brings her a lot of happiness. Her mother advised her to explore other interests. Upon hearing this, she feels a sense of sadness. Clay told Ruth about the woman she had left on the street. The two then see flamingos in the pool. George and Amanda danced and hugged. They almost hit it off when they realized they were married and were just intoxicated. The buzzing sound rings out once more, causing everyone to immediately cover their ears. The Sanfords slept together. Ruth tells her dad she's terrified and begs to sleep beside him. She then rants about how the Sanford family freaks her out, and she doesn't trust them. She tells her it wasn't right to sleep in their basement in their own house. The next morning, the unexpected flow of blood startled Archie as it gushed out of his mouth. Upon closer inspection, Archie realized that his tooth had been easily extracted. He tells his dad that his teeth fell out when he touched them. This worries his parents. Amanda wants Archie to go to the hospital. George thinks that Danny can help them. After realizing Rose is missing, they search for her. Archie was vomiting, but Ruth begs George not to leave her. She gives him an hour to help the Sanfords. They reached Danny's house but were instructed to wait on the doorstep. They then asked him what was happening. Danny informs them they were lucky to be out of the city and are amazed they are alive. Danny informed them that the noise had damaged Archie's teeth, citing a similar situation in Cuba where microwave weapons emitted radiation through sound. Danny thinks what's happening is a war. Reports stated that the Russians requested that their staff return from Washington. After that, asks if they had even noticed. George makes a request for assistance from him. He threatens them that if they come back again, he'll shoot them. He suggests they see his neighbor, Thorns, who converted the basement without permission. Danny said it's a rich doomsday bunker. Amanda is shocked to see Ruth surrounded by deer. She rushed to save her. The two yell to scare the deer. George and Danny point their guns at each other. Luckily, Clay stops them and begs Danny to help his son. Danny starts to feel sorry for him and helps his son. He also mentions that he thinks Koreans are behind what's going on. George then discusses what is really happening. George's main client is in the defense industry, and he studies military campaign cost-benefit analysis. One program, the three-step maneuver that might topple a country's control from the inside, terrified his client the most. First, they isolate themselves by cutting off communication and transportation. They deafen, dumben, and immobilize the target. In the second stage, they scare them with covert attacks and misinformation. If it is effective, the third step will happen on its own. A civil war, or coup d'état, is the stage. He states that this scheme is the cheapest method to destabilize the nation. A dysfunctional target nation would do the work for you. George states that whoever started this wanted them to finish it. Ruth and Amanda hold each other as they see some smoke coming from the sky. While they were trying to find Rose, she was too busy eating at her hideout. She goes straight to the hallway, checks out the place, and goes to the basement. There, she sees a room full of supplies that people need to survive. She then goes straight to the CD and finds her favorite show, Friends, and watches it happily.